Okay, welcome. Today we're actually going to be making some lovely Scottish shortbread. Buttery, crisp and absolutely delicious. Heralding from Scotland. So what we need to actually make these beautiful shortbreads is 125 grams of butter. We need a quarter cup, so a quarter cup measure of caster sugar. We'll need 1 cup of plain flour and we'll need a quarter cup of corn flour. This just adds to the texture and gives a really nice beautiful shortbread crumb. Now first things first with the shortbread, what's important is we're going to actually cream the butter and the sugar. And what that means is we're actually going to beat the butter and sugar together quite vigorously in order to dissolve the sugar into the butter and make it nice and light for our beautiful shortbreads. So I'm going to put the quarter cup of caster sugar straight into the bowl. Now with my wooden spoon, I'm just going to cream the butter and sugar. At the moment, the butter and sugar looks quite yellow. When we cream and mix, we want a nice light mixture, you're going to see the change from bright yellow to a pale creamy mix. Then we'll know we're ready for the next step. So I'm just going to mix. Now again, you could use an electric mixer for this stage, but for the amount of butter, and the butter's pretty soft, it's really nice to not have to use too much equipment, and that the wooden spoon and the glass bowl is fine to use. Okay, so still creaming. Again, I'm quite vigorous with that butter and sugar mix because I really want to go for the nice light airy look, and I also want a nice fluffy light crumb with my actual shortbread. Now by doing this, it really does dissolve the sugar into the butter and gives us a nice consistent uniform flavour throughout this biscuit. Okay, right, so now I'm pretty happy with where that's up to. So you can see it's actually quite light and it's quite pale in colour. That's actually known as the process of creaming. Okay, so you do need to be quite vigorous with your creaming, and it's a great process to make the start of any type of beautiful biscuit or even beautiful cake or muffin. So definitely a good skill to have in your cooking toolkit. Okay, I'm now going to sift the dry ingredients into our liquid buttery sugar ingredients. So what I want to do there is put in my 1 cup of plain flour. Now for this shortbread, it's not going to rise, so we don't need to worry about adding self-raising flour. All we're after is good old plain flour, and also our corn flour to go in. It'll give a nice lovely crumb, nice lovely texture. So I'm just going to sift. Now the tip with sifting is you just hold the sifter nice in the middle of your bowl. Just use your hand to gently tap the actual flour mixture into the butter mixture. So just keep tapping away, and you shouldn't make too much of a mess there. There we go. Alrighty, moving on. So now we're ready to make the actual biscuit dough. I'm just going to incorporate the flour into the butter mixture. Now it'll sort of want to look like a crumbly mess. Be patient. It does take a while for the butter to be absorbed into the flour, so you just need to be patient to work that dough and work that butter and flour to incorporate it. Now you'll know it's ready, and see how I'm not kind of mixing, I'm kind of almost rubbing it with the wooden spoon into the glass bowl, and that just helps the incorporation of the butter and the flour. Now you'll know it's ready when the dough will actually hold its shape when you actually press on it. Okay, and it'll actually want to go into a bit of a dough ball. It'll want to go into a dough ball when you know it's ready. So have a look at the change. So it's gone from a floury, crumbly mess, and now as I keep working that dough, it'll come together quite smooth, and it will be just an absolutely wonderful shortbread biscuit very shortly. So again, just work it and see how it's now into a beautiful dough ball. That's when you know it's ready, and it's ready to be made into your shortbread rounds. Okay, so in order to have this happen, we just need to put a little bit of plain flour onto a cutting board. By doing this, it prevents the dough from sticking to that surface. And otherwise we don't want a real sticky mess. So just be careful, don't put too much flour on there. If you have, don't be afraid. If you put a bit too much in there, just move it to the side into a bit of a pile, and then take your dough. Now with the dough, I'm just going to lightly knead it. Now with the heel of my hand, I'm just going to gently push the dough. It's a really, really nice dough. If you get this mixture right and your measurements right, you'll end up with really beautiful biscuits. I'm now going to roll it into a bit of a log shape to make my rounds. Okay, so here we go. We're almost there. So with the actual rounds, this is what we're actually going to do. So I've got a bit of a log that I've formed with my hands. You don't want it too thin, otherwise the biscuits are probably going to brown too quick if you cut them too thin. So we're probably looking, so just tap in the edges. So can you see how my edges aren't tapered or to a point? They're actually flat, so I've just pushed that in a bit like a big fat sausage there. Okay. So with a nice sharp knife, I'm now going to create the rounds for the biscuits. And I'm probably wanting to look at roughly about 1 centimetre thick. Whoa! Flying through the air in the kitchen. Here we go. So we probably want it to be about 1 centimetre thick. Again, take your time. As soon as we start rushing in the kitchen, accidents start to happen. So it's a really good learning tool just to take your time, and you'll end up turning out some beautiful food. Right, so there's our first round. Again, you're looking about 1 centimetre. Don't worry if it looks a little bit flat on the end. You can just shape that. So I'm just going to cut those into their rounds. You can just sort of shape that again and just push down gently. Flatten down gently. Now the other skill you'll need to have is how do you arrange your cookie dough onto your tray correctly. Now this, I'm going to show you the best way to do that, and that is simply to arrange it in a 2:3 ratio, which is simply 1, 2 plus a middle, and then 1, 2 plus a middle. Now by doing it in this format, it actually allows the hot air in the oven to get in and around each of those cookies and allow for them to cook nice and evenly. Okay, so again, just placing it onto the tray. You might actually have 2 trays ready for this, but if we can fit it in, we will. We'll see how we go. They won't spread too much, but they have got a fair bit of butter, 125 grams. There we go, moving along. I might just tuck that in there, that's fine. But normally, you want to allow, the rule of thumb is to really allow enough room for the hot air to get around. Try to avoid putting them too close together, otherwise they're going to actually connect to each other, and it's going to be a mess on the tray. So I'm just going to push them down, just lightly. Okay, again, leaving yourself some room. Now if I use those 3 fingers, I can actually make a really cool indentation into the top of my cookie, which gives it a little bit more interest. So if you can just see there, the indentation just made with 3 fingers, push together like that, and push down. Okay, so just gently make that indentation. You can use a fork and create your own pattern on top. I know in Scotland sometimes they actually have a special type of, I suppose, like a stamp, like a cookie stamp, and you can push it into the top. It makes it a little bit more interesting, and it does add a little bit more interest to the actual cookie. Alrighty, these actual shortbread cookies are ready to be baked. These shortbread biscuits have just come out of the oven, and I wanted to show you when they're actually cooked, so how you can tell that they're actually ready to come out of the oven. What you need to remember is, unlike other cookies or other biscuit recipes, the biscuits often go quite golden and they're quite rich in colour. Shortbreads traditionally are quite pale, so don't wait in the oven for them to go nice and golden, because if you wait for them to go golden, it's going to ruin the actual flavour of the shortbread. When you know that they're ready is pretty much when they're pretty firm to the touch, and you'll get a light colour around the edges, not too dark but just light enough, and then you'll know that they're actually ready to come out of the oven. Now as you can see on this cookie, we've got the 3 indentations on top of the biscuit, and what's wonderful about that is that you can actually think about a design that you can actually imprint on there to actually make those shortbread cookies your own. So that's how you tell if shortbreads are completely ready for you to eat. All you have to do now is wait for them to be cooked. Enjoy.